What if I told you that your brain is actually actively lying to you every single morning?
Yeah, literally within 60 seconds of opening your eyes.
Seriously, it's like you have this highly dedicated, just ruthless public relations team inside your head.
Frantically rewriting the script.
Exactly. Rewriting the script of your own memories just to protect your ego. I mean, I want you to think back to the most vivid, cinematic, and just utterly bizarre dream you have ever had. You know the exact kind I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely. The ones where you wake up and just think, what on earth was my subconscious even doing last night?
Right. And then you try to explain it to a friend over coffee, and halfway through the story, you realize how ridiculous it sounds.
You hear yourself talking and you just want to stop.
Yeah, you find yourself saying things like, "So I was flying, but I was also late for a math test and my boss was there."
But your boss was actually a giant penguin or something.
Exactly. And it is a universal experience.
It is. And almost inevitably, we just kind of laugh those moments off, right? We categorize them as the brain doing its nightly data dump.
Like it's just random neuron
Yeah.
misfires.
Just a bit of static on the mental television before the real broadcast of the waking day begins.
But that is the lie. What if it isn't random static at all? What if that chaotic, messy, late night mental movie wasn't just some bizarre screening, but was actually a hyper-accurate, brutally honest psychological report card?
That changes the entire paradigm.
It really does. And today, we are taking you on a journey into the architecture of the human mind. We are going to walk through a real-time clinical psychology and psychodynamic analysis of an incredibly complex dream.
And this is not your win-of-the-mill dream.
Now, when I say this dream has layers, I mean it has absolutely everything. We are talking about a hospital rehabilitation wing, a late-night supermarket shift.
A transition into a high-end capo restaurant?
Yeah, and a terrifying anime character crashing a date. And even a celebrity police officer conducting an interrogation.
I mean, it sounds like pure chaos on the surface. But what's really fascinating here is that beneath that surface, chaos is a breathtakingly precise psychological structure.
Right.
We're going to look at this through the lens of what the pioneering psychiatrist Carl Jung called the individuation process.
Okay, for anyone unfamiliar with that term, let's break that down.
So think of individuation as the ultimate psychological project of your life. It is the complex, often really painful process of how a person takes all the different conflicting, fragmented parts of their identity.
Their desires, their fears, their societal programming.
Exactly. And attempts to integrate them into one cohesive whole self.
Okay, let's unpack this right out of the gate, because when the average person hears the phrase dream analysis, it is incredibly easy to conjure up an image of mystical fortune-telling.
Oh, the crystal balls in the dimly lit rooms.
Yeah. We picture someone telling you that dreaming of a snake means you're going to win the lottery next Tuesday.
Or that losing your teeth means bad luck is coming.
Right, so I want to make it crystal clear to you listening, that is not what this deep dive's about.
Not even close. There is no mysticism here.
Yeah.
This is a rigorous, clinical examination of human defense mechanisms.
And over the course of this discussion, we are going to track this specific dreamer's journey.
We'll go through his physical and mental healing,
His desperate reach for social ambition,
his battle with his own inner shadow.
and ultimately his terrifying confrontation with the supreme internal judge, which is his own superego.
Yeah, it's quite the journey.
And this is exactly why this matters to you right now as you listen to this. Even though this isn't your dream, and I guarantee it isn't because the details get wildly specific to this one guy, the defense mechanisms are universal.
The deep-seated insecurities.
Yeah, and the elaborate mental smoke and mirrors this dreamer uses to avoid feeling inadequate. You do this, I do this.
We all do it, constantly.
So by the end of our time today, you are going to look at your own daydreams, your own career ambitions, and definitely your own hidden anxieties in a completely different way.
You might even catch that PR team in your head red-handed.
I love that. It really is a mirror held up to human nature. And what makes this particular clinical place so incredibly rare and so deeply valuable for us to analyze is the specific methodology of how this dream was captured.
The recording method, it's so unique.
The conditions under which the data was recorded actually change everything about how we can view it. Let's talk about that, because the context of how we even have this information is almost as fascinating as the dream narrative itself.
Yeah, the dreamer didn't do what most people do.
Right. He didn't wake up, stretch, make a cup of coffee, and then sit down with a nice leather journal to write out his thoughts.
Because by then, it's too late.
Exactly. Instead, he grabbed a voice recorder immediately upon opening his eyes. He recorded his dictation in a semi-conscious, completely groggy state,
He was basically still half asleep.
hovering right in that liminal space between the dream world and the waking world.
And from a clinical psychodynamic perspective, that specific detail is pure gold. It is the key to the entire analysis.
Why is that so crucial?
Well, when we talk about analyzing dreams, one of the biggest, most frustrating hurdles we face as psychologists is a phenomenon known as secondary revision.
Sometimes called secondary processing, right?
Yes.
Hold on, I need to understand the mechanics of that. What is secondary revision actually doing in the brain?
So to understand secondary revision, you have to understand the job of your ego. The ego is the rational waking part of your brain.
The conscious you.
Right. Its primary directive is to make sense of the world, to keep you functional, and to protect your self-image. It loves logic. It demands cause and effect.
And it hates contradictions.
It despises them. So when you wake up and transition from the theta and delta brainwaves of sleep,
Into the alert alpha and beta waves of wakefulness.
exactly, your ego comes online and immediately looks back at the dream you just had.
And the ego hates what it sees because dreams don't follow the laws of physics or logic.
Precisely. The unconscious mind speaks in bizarre, abstract, raw symbolism. So the awake brain, the ego, steps in and acts as a strict censor.
It's editing the footage.
Yes, it looks at this chaotic, emotionally raw footage and starts quietly, automatically editing it. It smooths out the rough edges.
It fills in the plot holes so the narrative makes linear sense.
And most importantly, it sanitizes the story so that the underlying emotional truths, which might be deeply uncomfortable or shameful, are hidden safely away.
It makes the dream palatable.
Yeah, so you can go about your day without having an existential crisis over your breakfast.
That is wild. It really is like a Hollywood studio executive coming into the editing room after the eccentric director has shot this bizarre indie film.
And the executive recuts the entire movie to make it test better with mainstream audiences.
Yes. And the ego does this instantaneously.
Right. The rational censorship of the waking mind twists the pure flow of what we call libido.
And we should clarify, in psychodynamic terms, libido doesn't just mean sexual drive.
No, it means pure mental energy, your life force.
So the ego twists that energy into a neat little package.
But because this specific dreamer hit the record button while he was barely awake, while he was still groggy and uncoordinated, that rational censor hadn't fully booted up yet.
His ego was essentially asleep at the wheel.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. So recording in this incredibly groggy state is basically catching your brain with his pants down before it has time to hire that PR team to spin the narrative.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The PR team hadn't clocked into work yet.
Wow.
So what spilled out of his mouth and into that voice recorder was the pure, unfiltered, unedited symbolism of the unconscious mind.
We are getting the raw psychological data without the waking brain interfering and trying to make it logical or safe.
It is a direct pipeline to his deepest insecurities.
It is genuinely unsettling to think that we are constantly running a PR campaign in our own heads, manipulating our own memories of our own dreams just to protect our fragile self-image.
We do it every single day.
So now that we know we are dealing with this pure, unedited psychological data, where does this wild narrative actually begin?
Well, we start in a place of literal physical healing. The dream opens with a very grounded, realistic setting. A hospital.
Right. And this opening scene is firmly anchored in the dreamer's actual waking reality.
Yes, in his real life, outside of the dream, he had recently suffered a physical hand injury.
And he was actively attending rehabilitation sessions at a local hospital.
Exactly.
So in the opening moments of the dream, he is at this hospital for his rehab, and he meets a woman. Now, this isn't a stranger. This is a woman he actually knows in his waking life.
Someone he has genuine romantic interest in.
Yeah, but the dream doesn't linger in the hospital for long. The scene very quickly and jarringly shifts.
There's suddenly no longer patients or visitors in a rehab wing.
Right, they are working together on a late-night shift at a sprawling supermarket tasked with doing inventory and quality inspections.
We need to pause right here, because this initial transition is profoundly rich with psychological meaning.
Okay, let's dig in.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to break down what the hospital represents first. In the deep layers of the human psyche, a hospital isn't just a building where doctors fix a physical hand injury.
What is it, symbolically?
Symbolically, it acts as a sanctuary for mind-body self-recovery. It represents a deep internal reharmonization of a person's mental energy.
So yes, he is healing physically in the real world, but the dream uses the hospital environment to signal to us that he is in a vulnerable state.
He's attempting to heal psychologically as well. He is trying to put the broken pieces of his life back together.
And what about the woman? Because if there is one thing I've learned about this kind of analysis, it's that it is never just a woman or a guy in a dream, is it?
No, never. There are always avatars for something inside the dreamer.
You are entirely correct. In the framework of Jungian psychology, we refer to this specific figure as the anima.
The anima is a complex concept, but fundamentally it represents the unconscious feminine side of a man's personality.
Let's make sure we are really clear on that for the listener, because feminine side can mean a lot of things to different people.
It really can.
So what does Jung actually mean by the anima?
It's not about societal gender roles in a superficial sense. Jung argued that because men are often socialized from a very young age to repress certain traits.
Like deep emotional sensitivity.
Right. Vulnerability, intuition, and the capacity for profound emotional connection. Those repressed traits don't just disappear.
They don't just evaporate.
No, they coalesce in the unconscious mind and form an inner personality, which Jung called the anima.
Okay, so when a man dreams of a woman he is attracted to, he isn't just dreaming about her as an external person.
She becomes the projection of his own internal emotional life. She's the avatar of his sensitivity and his soul.
Wow. And the fact that their interaction in the dream begins in the hospital, that perfectly mirrors the dreamer's own mental recovery.
Exactly. As his physical body heals, his psyche is trying to get closer to his own buried emotions.
That reframes the entire interaction. He's not just flirting with a crush. His conscious mind is trying to reconcile with his own capacity to feel.
Yes.
But then, as we noted, the environment abruptly changes. They leave the safe, sterile, caring environment of the hospital.
And they go to a supermarket in the dead of night.
It shifts from this bright place of passive healing to the humming, fluorescent, quiet aisles of a grocery store where they are put to work doing inventory.
Moving from the hospital to the supermarket signifies a massive, daunting psychological shift for the dreamer.
Oh, so.
It is the monumental move from passive healing where you are being cared for, where nothing is expected of you other than to rest, to active societal adaptation.
Okay.
Think about what a supermarket is at its core. It is a place of commerce, of societal interaction, of transaction and exchange,
It represents the real world.
where you are judged by what you can produce and what you can afford.
And crucially, they aren't just pushing a cart around shopping for groceries. They're specifically doing late-night inventory work.
Right. They're checking stock, inspecting items for damage, counting boxes.
This isn't just a mundane, random job the brain generated for background noise.
No, think about the mechanical reality of taking inventory. You are forced to count exactly what you have. You are checking for damaged goods.
You are organizing the stock so it can be presented to the public.
Symbolically, this represents the dreamer desperately trying to sort, organize, and take stock of his own internal assets, his skills, his worth, and his emotional stability.
After his injury, he's preparing himself to re-enter the market of life and society.
That's exactly it.
Hold on, that doesn't track for me entirely.
Why not?
If he's just doing a mental inventory to get ready for the world, why is he having a near panic attack at the cash register?
Wrong.
Because in the dream dictation, he explicitly describes himself as feeling like the new guy at the supermarket, completely out of his depth.
Yeah.
The anima is working the cash register with ease, and he is frantically, desperately trying to show off to her.
Trying to prove he's good at this simple job.
Yeah, but he fails, and he feels incredibly frustrated and anxious. If sorting your internal skills is supposed to be a productive step toward healing, why does this scene feel so desperate and panicked?
That is the perfect question, because that intense anxiety is the absolute core of this entire sequence.
Oh, okay.
The panic highlights a devastating real-world lack of self-efficacy. Deep down, beneath his conscious awareness, he doesn't actually feel capable or valuable.
He feels like the new guy in his own life.
He feels behind. He is frantically wanting the anima's approval. But remember what we just established about the anima.
She represents his own internal emotional center.
Exactly. So he is projecting his deep, starving craving for self-validation onto this woman.
He wants his own emotional core to look at him and say, you are doing a good job, you are valuable, you are enough.
But because he profoundly doubts his own worth in the waking world, because he feels broken by his injury and his life circumstances, that deep-seated doubt bleeds into the dream architecture.
It manifests as this frantic, humiliating attempt to show off with supermarket boxes. That makes a heartbreaking amount of sense. He's trying to prove to his own soul that he has value, but his brain won't let him believe the lie.
It won't let him off the hook.
And that agonizing tension leads us perfectly into the next phase of the dream, where things start to get truly chaotic at that checkout counter.
The dreamer is trying to sort his internal inventory, but suddenly the baggage starts expanding beyond his control.
Yes. This is the moment where the psyche's defense mechanisms really start to fire up.
Attempting to save the ego from the pain of that inadequacy.
Okay, so picture this scene. During this stressful, frantic supermarket shift, the dreamer suddenly makes a bizarre decision.
He decides he's going to try and intercept some of the store's inventory.
And resell it for quick cash. Suddenly, there is this massive, bulky order that needs immediate shipping. He drags it over to the anima at the register.
She is now acting as the inspector, checking his packages before they could be shipped out.
And she immediately notices a major problem. The packages he has prepared lack proper desiccants.
For those listening, desiccants are those little paper packets of silica gel you find in new shoeboxes or electronics.
They absorb moisture to keep the product dry and safe.
The inclusion of the desiccants in this dream is a stroke of subconscious brilliance.
Why is that?
In the language of dreams and mythology, water and moisture almost universally represent the unconscious and raw emotion.
Oh, wow.
The anima, acting as the inspector of his emotional state, is looking at his life plans and saying, "You haven't properly prepared these packages to handle the moisture."
If real messy emotions seep into this, your whole plan is going to be ruined.
Exactly.
So she forces him to open the packages to check the contents. And inside, she finds two very specific, highly unusual items.
This isn't supermarket food.
No. The first item is an old wall clock. The second item is a heavy, thick lacquer frame entirely covered in gold leaf with some sort of ornate writing on it.
But here is where the grounded reality of the supermarket dissolves.
And pure dream logic takes over. Impossibly, the moment she opens the packages, both the clock and the gold frame suddenly become massive.
They physically expand to an enormous size, taking over the space.
So, to understand this, we have to start with the dreamer's initial action. The act of reselling itself. Why on earth is he taking mundane supermarket goods and trying to secretly flip them for quick cash in the middle of the night?
Clinically, we analyze this behavior as a defense mechanism. It's a vanity project.
Vanity project.
The dreamer is feeling deeply insecure, as we establish. So rather than doing the slow, unglamorous, difficult work of genuinely building his self-worth and healing his life,
He looks for a shortcut.
he is trying to cheaply sell off his internal worth for instant external validation. He wants a quick transaction to feel valuable.
To prove to the anima that he is a big shot.
Exactly.
That brings us to the specific objects he is trying to ship out in this hustle. Let's start with the clock. Why an old wall clock? Why not a digital watch or a grandfather clock? And why does it suddenly get huge the moment it's exposed?
Well, the clock represents time, which is straightforward enough. But the specific nature of it, an old wall clock, is vital. Think about where you see old wall clocks.
In schools, in factories.
In hospital waiting rooms, in government buildings, a wall clock represents institutional time.
Objective, societal timelines.
It is the ticking reminder that says by age 30 you should be married. By age 40 you should own a home and have a career.
Ah, and the expanding wall clock points to intense time constraints.
And a suffocating anxiety about his life planning. It is a subconscious terror of mental and physical aging.
Remember, he had a hand injury in real life. Physical trauma reminds us of our mortality and the inescapable limits of our bodies.
Right. And the fact that the clock physically expands in the dream is his anxiety about time running out getting so overwhelmingly large that his ego can no longer ignore it.
That is a terrifying image, just a giant ticking reminder of everything you haven't accomplished. What about the second object, the gold leaf frame?
It sounds incredibly heavy.
And ostentatious, especially sitting in a fluorescent-lit grocery store.
It is entirely ostentatious, and that is exactly its purpose. The gold frame symbolizes societal honor, wealth, and high status.
It represents a deeply inflated desire to show off.
Psychologically, when a person feels incredibly small, hollow, and insecure on the inside, their mind will often produce these heavily gilded, flashy fantasies to compensate.
He wants to appear vastly more valuable and important than he actually feels.
He wants to be seen as a man of gold leaf quality, not a guy struggling with inventory.
But just like the clock, the frame expands. His desire for status grows completely out of control, becoming a massive, unwieldy burden.
And it really does become a literal burden when they try to repackage everything.
The dreamer describes the final state of this attempted shipment in vivid detail. He ends up with 9 oddly shaped, giant cardboard boxes.
They are haphazardly tied together with those cheap, tough plastic PP bands you see on industrial shipping crates.
Right, and this entire ugly bundle is standing completely upright, as tall as a human being and as wide as a traditional Japanese tatami mat.
It's this towering, precarious, ugly monolith of brown cardboard and plastic straps.
What an incredible image. It is the absolute perfect visual representation of his current psychological burden.
That really is.
So these 9 giant boxes are basically emotional baggage Tetris, and the dreamer is losing the game terribly.
The psychic load he's trying to carry is literally larger than he is.
He's standing next to this massive tower of cardboard, plastic bands, expanding clocks, and gold frames, and the sheer weight of it is just overwhelming him.
And you have to keep the interpersonal dynamic in mind here. The anima, his core emotional truth, is standing right there at the register.
Watching him struggle to manage this chaotic mess.
The discrepancy between what he desperately wants to be, the slick, successful, quick cash reseller of gold frames, and what he actually is, a frantic guy being crushed by a tower of ugly cardboard boxes, is completely unbearable for his fragile ego.
The humiliation is total.
It is.
So how does his mind try to rescue him from this absolute humiliation? Because as you said, the dreamer is completely overwhelmed by this massive, ugly pile of emotional baggage. His ego is backed into a corner.
His brain has to do something dramatic.
Right, to protect him from waking up in a cold sweat of sheer inadequacy.
Yes. When the human ego is threatened with that level of acute anxiety, shame, and inadequacy, it doesn't just give up. It deploys a spectacular reality-bending illusion.
It completely changes the scenery to alter the narrative, which brings us to the most visually stunning transition in the dream. The golden facade and the capo restaurant.
This is where the dream takes a hard left turn out of the mundane and straight into luxury.
The dreamer, sweating and anxious, decides he's going to carry these massive, ugly cardboard boxes out of the supermarket himself.
He hoists this human-sized monolith of cardboard up, walks toward the automatic sliding glass doors.
But when he steps through the exit, he doesn't step out into a dark asphalt parking lot.
No.
Suddenly, the exit of the supermarket is the entrance to a high-end, traditional Japanese capo restaurant.
For anyone who hasn't been to one, a capo restaurant is an incredibly wealthy, exclusive dining establishment where a master chef cooks intricate dishes right in front of a small, elite clientele.
The geographic and atmospheric shift here is breathtaking in its psychological implications.
We're moving from the blue-collar drudgery of a supermarket to the absolute pinnacle of culinary wealth and exclusivity.
And it's not just the location that magically upgrades. The moment he steps over the threshold into this high-end restaurant, the ordinary cheap brown cardboard boxes he is sweating under instantly transform.
They literally turn into artistic, artisan-crafted boxes completely adorned with shimmering gold leaf.
And immediately, the incredibly polite, highly professional restaurant staff rush over to him.
They gently take the heavy boxes from his arms and carry them away for him.
I want to highlight this specific sequence as one of the absolute most vital insights of this entire deep dive.
What we are witnessing here, happening in real time within the dream architecture, is the unconscious mind actively building what Jung called a persona.
Let's dive deep into that. A persona. The word comes from the Latin word for a theatrical mask, right?
Exactly. It is a social mask. Jung theorized that the persona is the complicated system of behavior, attitudes, and appearances we construct to meet the demands of society.
And to protect our vulnerable inner selves.
Think about the mechanics of what just happened to the dreamer. He is taking his messy, muddy, humiliating, everyday struggles.
Represented by the supermarket and the giant, ugly boxes of his complexes.
Right, and he is instantly attempting to beautify them. He takes his raw anxiety and his deep feelings of inadequacy and wraps them in a thick layer of high social status.
The exclusive capo restaurant and the artisan gold boxes are the mask.
They are the gold coat of paint over a rotting structure.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me, because this isn't just dream logic, this is human behavior.
We all do it.
He literally puts a gold coat of paint on his anxiety. It's exactly like putting a heavily edited Instagram filter over a panic attack.
That Instagram filter analogy is spot on.
He's effectively saying, I'm not a failure collapsing under the weight of my unresolved emotional baggage. I am simply an important man transporting my artisan gold boxes into an exclusive dining establishment.
And that perfectly explains why this matters to all of us. We do this in real life constantly, often without realizing it.
How so? Give me some examples.
The persona is how we survive in a competitive world. If we feel intellectually inadequate at work, maybe we start using unnecessarily complex, jargon-heavy vocabulary in meetings.
This sounds smarter than we are.
Exactly. Or if we feel unloved or unnoticed, maybe we max out a credit card to buy a luxury car or expensive clothes.
To artificially simulate the experience of being valuable.
The dreamer is doing exactly this, but in real-time visual symbolism. He is masking the ugly, crushing reality of his insecurities with the sparkling veneer of wealth and status.
It's the ultimate fake it till you make it strategy, but internalized.
Yeah.
And what about the restaurant staff taking the boxes for him? He was struggling and straining to carry them in the supermarket, and now suddenly he doesn't have to lift a single finger.
That specific detail reveals the core fantasy of outsourcing emotional pain.
Outsourcing emotional.
Yeah. By having the polite restaurant staff graciously take the heavy boxes away, the dreamer is indulging in a deeply seductive fantasy. The belief that if he can just achieve high enough social status, his heavy emotional burdens will magically be handled by the world around him.
Oh, wow.
It's the illusion that wealth and prestige act as a cure-all for psychological suffering. He believes that if he is rich enough, successful enough, or prestigious enough, the sheer pain of his insecurities will just be carried away by polite staff.
He won't have to do the heavy lifting of self-reflection anymore.
Exactly.
The belief that if I'm successful enough, my internal problems won't be heavy anymore. That is a dangerous, pervasive, incredibly common fantasy.
We see people sacrifice their entire lives pursuing wealth just to escape their own minds, only to find the boxes are still there.
So now, our dreamer is comfortably situated inside this wealthy fantasy world. His ugly cardboard boxes are hidden away, disguised as expensive art.
And he sits down to go on a date with the anima in a private, luxurious room at this restaurant.
He has set the stage perfectly for his ego. He has achieved the status, his burdens are hidden, and he has the girl.
But the unconscious mind is incredibly persistent. It hates a lie.
Even in a fantasy environment that you explicitly construct to protect yourself, you cannot permanently escape your underlying insecurities.
The truth always leaks through.
And that brutal reality check comes crashing through the door in the next sequence. The romance game and the anime shadow.
So let me set this scene for you.
The dreamer and the anima are now sitting together in this chic, heavy private room. The dreamer specifically notes in his dictation that the room feels oppressive but luxurious, made entirely of traditional black and red lacquer.
It feels very expensive.
But what are they actually doing in this high-end romantic room? They aren't having a deep conversation over fine dining. They are playing video games.
And they are engaging in this incredibly tense romantic tug-of-war.
The dreamer describes it as a psychological game where they both know they like each other, but they are stubbornly trying to force the other person to confess their feelings first.
Right away, as an analyst, you look at the setting and the action and you see they are in total conflict. He has constructed this beautiful, traditional, mature environment, but their focus is entirely on a digital screen playing immature games.
Clinically speaking, treating love and human connection as a strategic game, this whole who will confess first to maintain the upper hand dynamic, reveals something very important about his psyche.
It shows that the dreamer's connection to his own emotions, represented by the anima, is entirely superficial. It is calculated. It is an exercise in control, not genuine vulnerability.
It's deeply defensive. If you can manipulate the other person into confessing first, you hold all the power in the dynamic. You never have to risk the sting of rejection.
You don't have to put your heart on the line.
Exactly. He is absolutely terrified of being vulnerable. To be vulnerable means exposing the fact that he isn't the wealthy man with gold boxes. He's the broken man with the hand injury and the ugly cardboard.
So he intellectualizes the romance into a strategy game. He keeps her at arm's length.
But psychodynamics dictate that when you refuse to be authentic, when you suppress your true feelings behind a game, your psyche will usually force the issue.
By manifesting your absolute worst fears to shatter the illusion.
Which is exactly what happens next in the most jarring way possible.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, the heavy lacquered door to the private room slides open, and a wealthy classmate of the dreamer interrupts the date.
And this classmate just casually, arrogantly claims that the date is actually his, and the anima was just waiting for him to arrive.
But here is the most bizarre, jarring detail of the entire dream. This classmate doesn't look like a normal human being.
No.
The dreamer describes him as looking and sounding exactly like a bizarre, non-human black and white character from the famous anime series Bleach.
He specifically notes that the classmate looks like a grotesque mad scientist, painted in stark, high-contrast black and white.
This is the arrival of what we call the shadow. In psychodynamic terms, the shadow is one of the most powerful archetypes.
It represents everything about ourselves that we repress, deny, feel ashamed of, or feel we completely lack.
We shove all these unacceptable traits into a metaphorical bag and drag it behind us.
This classmate is the ultimate shadow figure for our dreamer.
Walk us through the mechanics of that. How is this classmate his shadow?
Well, ask yourself, what does the dreamer deeply feel he lacks? He feels he lacks financial power, pedigree, and perfect social standing. He feels inadequate.
The classmate in the waking world likely has all of those things effortlessly.
He is the heir to a wealthy family. He possesses the absolute, unshakable confidence that the dreamer is desperately trying to fake with his gold boxes and capo restaurant.
The classmate represents the crushing reality of the dreamer's own inferiority. But that raises a massive question. If the classmate is just a rich guy, why does he look like a grotesque 2D anime character?
Right, why not just a handsome guy in a suit?
Why make him a cartoon mad scientist?
Because we are not seeing the rival as he actually exists.
Right.
We're seeing the rival entirely through the distorted lens of the dreamer's intense jealousy and blinding inferiority complex.
Oh.
When you feel vastly, hopelessly inferior to someone, your psyche cannot tolerate seeing them as a normal, nuanced human being with their own flaws and struggles.
That would require empathy, which the threatened ego cannot afford.
So your jealousy distorts them, it flattens them, it turns them into a monstrous alien entity.
The stark black and white face is incredibly telling. It lacks all human nuance.
It is an absolute terrifying force of nature rather than a person. A mad scientist is cold, calculating, and dissects things without emotion.
The dreamer's insecurity is so profound that it literally turns a guy with more money into a horrifying, unstoppable anime villain.
That is deeply relatable, honestly. When you're truly threatened by someone at work or in a relationship, they cease to be a person. They become a monster in your head, a cartoon villain of perfection that you can never defeat.
So how does the dreamer react to this anime monster trying to steal his date? He doesn't flip the table. He doesn't fight him physically.
Instead, the dreamer tries to outsmart the rival.
He starts using convoluted, highly sarcastic, overly complex language to try and insult the anime character, desperately trying to hide his internal panic behind a wall of vocabulary.
And this is another defense mechanism firing on all cylinders. This is the beginning of intellectualization.
Faced with raw, primal fear, jealousy, and total inadequacy, his ego retreats into his head.
He abandons his emotions entirely. He tries to use logic, sarcasm, and complex wordplay as a shield to prove he is intellectually superior, even if he is socially inferior.
But it completely, utterly backfires. The anima, the woman he is trying to impress, the representation of his own soul, just looks at him with profound disappointment.
She doesn't laugh at his sarcastic jokes.
She doesn't marvel at his vocabulary. Instead, she silently stands up, switches places, and leaves the dreamer entirely humiliated, choosing to sit next to the terrifying anime classmate.
So my question is, by trying to sound super smart and sarcastic to the shadow, does the dreamer actually end up proving to the anima exactly how terrified and insecure he really is?
Yes, and that is the tragedy of this defense mechanism. Logic without vulnerability destroys emotional connection.
The anima is his emotional truth. She functions as a lie detector. She can see right through the sarcastic wordplay.
She sees that he is absolutely terrified and that he is trying to mask that terror with big, empty words, just like he masked the cheap cardboard boxes with artisan gold leaf.
Because he fundamentally refused to be vulnerable, because he played video games instead of connecting, and hid behind sarcasm instead of admitting he was threatened, he loses his connection to his own emotions.
He is defeated by his own shadow, not because the shadow is stronger, but because the dreamer's defenses push the anima away. Just when you think the dreamer has hit absolute rock bottom in this romantic rivalry, the authorities arrive.
But they aren't there for a physical crime.
They aren't there because someone stole a gold box. We move into the next major sequence. The interrogation of the superego.
This is where the dream becomes truly meta, structurally astonishing, and frankly brilliant from a psychoanalytic standpoint.
Right, so the dreamer is sitting there in the lacquered room, completely humiliated, having just lost the girl to the anime monster.
Suddenly the police show up.
And not just any generic beatcocks. The lead detective is played by the famous Japanese actor Hayato Ichihara.
He walks into the room, looks dead at the dreamer, and says something incredibly jarring that breaks the fourth wall of the dream.
He says, "You've been narrating a detailed dream analysis this whole time, but this story is too well constructed and it shifts too fast. We don't believe you."
It is a stunning, breathtaking moment of self-awareness generated entirely within the unconscious mind.
Let's break down exactly who this celebrity detective represents. In Freudian terms, this figure is the ultimate manifestation of the superego.
The superego, let's define that clearly.
That's essentially the internal rule-maker, the conscience, right?
Yes, but it is often much harsher than just a guiding conscience. The superego is your internal police force, your judge, jury, and executioner.
It is constructed from all the morals, societal norms, parental expectations, and strict self-censorship you have absorbed since childhood.
It is the part of you that demands perfection and punishes you with guilt when you fail.
And in this dream, the supreme internal judge has arrived in the form of a recognizable authority figure, a celebrity detective, to call out the ego's pathetic behavior.
But the accusation is so weirdly specific. The detective isn't arresting him for stealing the supermarket items or faking the gold boxes.
He is explicitly accusing him of narrating a dream analysis.
This is the crux of the entire deep dive. This is the meta twist that makes this case study so unique.
While the dreamer was inside the dream, experiencing the capo restaurant and the anime character, his waking mind, his rational ego, was actively trying to analyze the dream as it was happening.
He is trying to figure out the symbolism while experiencing the trauma of it.
Hold on, I need to push back on that idea.
Go ahead.
If analyzing dreams is a good thing, which is literally the entire premise of what we are doing right now on this show, why is his brain punishing him for doing it?
Why is his own superego arresting him for being analytical and self-aware?
Isn't self-awareness the goal?
Self-awareness is the goal, yes, but the superego is punishing him because of the motive behind the analysis. The superego is calling him out for weaponizing a defense mechanism known as intellectualization.
Let's explore that mechanism deeply. What is intellectualization in this specific context? How is it a weapon?
Intellectualization is the act of using extreme logic, academic analysis, and complex reasoning as a sophisticated, mature-sounding excuse to run away from raw, muddy, painful emotions.
The detective is essentially saying to him, you are using all these flowery psychodynamic words, you are doing all this real-time psychological analysis to actively avoid actually feeling your own inadequacy.
Think about people who go to therapy for years, not to heal, but just to learn the clinical vocabulary so they can perfectly describe their trauma without ever having to shed a tear over it.
You cannot think your way out of a feeling.
Exactly. The dreamer was hurt, he was intensely jealous, and he felt deeply insecure when the classmate arrived.
But instead of letting himself feel that painful shame, he retreated into the ivory tower of his intellect and tried to analyze his own dream like a detached scientist observing a rat in a maze.
The superego is calling his bluff. It is saying, your analysis is a lie. Your intellectual detachment is just another mask, another gold box to protect your fragile ego from the pain of rejection.
That is absolutely fascinating and devastating. He's using self-awareness as a hiding place.
And the dream takes this conflict even further visually. The scene shifts from the restaurant to a cold, stark interrogation room.
The celebrity detective sits across from him and is taking written notes on a notepad as he interrogates the dreamer.
But as the detective writes down the dreamer's defensive answers, the physical words on the paper literally begin to alter the physical reality of the dream around them.
The environment shifts based on the notes.
That detail is a brilliant visual metaphor for exactly what the dreamer is trying to do with his intellectualization.
He is trying to use words, language, and narrative to alter reality.
He is trying to write his own script to escape the undeniable truth of his painful feelings.
But the critical detail is that the superego, the detective, holds the pen. The superego is forcing him to realize that his intellectual control is a complete illusion.
He cannot narrate his way out of guilt and shame.
Feeling the crushing, inescapable pressure of this interrogation because you ultimately cannot lie to your own conscience, the dreamer's mind frantically searches for an exit.
It desperately tries to hit the escape hatch one last time.
Which brings us to the final act of this psychological drama, the musical escape and final judgment.
The ego is completely cornered at this point. The golden persona of the restaurant failed.
The sarcastic intellectualization failed. The detached dream analysis failed.
So, terrified of facing the absolute truth of its own inadequacy, The mind resorts to one of the oldest, most primal defense mechanisms we possess, regression,
And the regression he experiences is wild and completely unhinged.
to escape the tense, suffocating interrogation room. The dream abruptly shifts settings one last time.
Suddenly, they are no longer in a police station. They are in a high school.
The dreamer and the anima are now adults, acting as teachers, and they are standing in this highly professional, well-equipped music studio located inside the high school.
The dreamer steps up to a microphone and just starts belting out a song. And bizarrely, the dream dictation specifically notes that the song he is singing was written by the famous Japanese actress Maki Horikita.
But the dreamer even notes while in the dream that Maki Horikita doesn't actually sing in real life.
It makes no logical sense, but he is belting out this impossible song, the anima joins in with him, and suddenly a massive crowd of teenage students appears.
Watching them, cheering wildly and clapping perfectly to the rhythm.
This entire bizarre musical sequence is what we clinically diagnose as a classic compensatory fantasy.
Compensatory fantasy, let's break that down.
Meaning it's a fantasy explicitly designed to compensate for the terrible, crushing feeling of failure he just experienced in the interrogation room.
Precisely. His ego was absolutely terrified, dismantled, and stripped naked by the brutal honesty of the superego.
The pain of that truth is unbearable.
So the psyche regresses back to adolescence represented by the high school setting. It frantically manufactures an artificial environment of maximum uncritical praise and approval to soothe the deeply wounded ego.
Notice the specific roles. He becomes a teacher, a figure of absolute authority and respect in a high school. He performs flawlessly in a professional studio.
The teenage students provide exactly what he craves: uncritical, enthusiastic, loud adoration.
It is a pure, concentrated injection of fake self-esteem designed entirely to counter the brutal reality check delivered by the detective.
It's exactly like daydreaming about winning an argument while you're taking a shower, days after the argument actually happened, but played out on a massive, hallucinatory cinematic scale.
It's the ultimate ego-stroking scenario.
But because the superego is still active and the individuation process demands truth, this flimsy fantasy cannot hold.
The reality of the mind forcefully collapses the illusion.
The cheering students fade away into silence, the high school studio dissolves, and the dreamer finds himself teleported right back to where the conflict started, the Capo restaurant.
The desperate attempt to escape into a regressive fantasy failed completely. The final judgment of the psyche has to be rendered.
The truth must be faced.
And the judgment delivered by the dream is incredibly harsh. We get the final, definitive shift of the narrative.
We look back at the anima, the woman who represents his true emotional connection and soul.
Earlier in the dream, she was preparing to leave the date with the wealthy classmate, the terrifying anime shadow.
But now, when the dust settles, she ends up leaving the restaurant, not with the wealthy rival, but with the detective, Hayato Ichihara.
This final shift in allegiance is incredibly important for the psychodynamic analysis. Why does the anima, his emotional core, choose the detective over the wealthy rival?
Because it reveals that the true victor in the dreamer's mind isn't social status, wealth, or power, which the shadow represents.
The true, ultimate victor is the internal judge, the superego.
The cold, hard, unvarnished reality check of the conscience wins out over the superficial, golden fantasy of wealth and the shallow armor of intellectualization.
The conscience wins. The truth wins out over the PR team.
And where does that leave our dreamer after all of this?
He is banished. He is forced to leave the beautiful, high-end, lacquered restaurant room. The dream ends with a haunting image. Him walking completely alone down a dark, narrow, silent hallway.
That concluding image of the dark hallway is deeply archetypal. Walking alone in the dark, stripped of all companions and status symbols, signifies total ego defeat.
All of his conscious attempts to control the narrative, to fake his value with gold boxes, to play romantic strategy games, and to hide behind intellectual analysis have been entirely stripped away by his own mind.
He is left with nothing but himself.
So if we look at the grand scope of this individuation journey, what does this all mean for him? He tried to fake it till he made it, got arrested by his own internal conscience for lying to himself, and ultimately got sent to the psychological naughty step in a dark hallway.
In a humorous way, yes. That is exactly what happened. But clinically, we do not view this ending as a tragedy.
We view this as a necessary, albeit incredibly painful, step toward actual psychological maturity.
The dark hallway is a classic warning symbol in dream analysis. It represents acute anxiety and a massive drop in mental energy or libido.
But much more importantly, it represents the unavoidable, terrifying need to look into one's own darkness and truly introspect.
You cannot heal a broken psyche in the bright, artificial, flattering light of the Capo restaurant. Nor can you heal it in the loud, uncritical cheers of a fantasy high school.
True healing requires you to face the dark hallway of your actual, unvarnished insecurities. You have to walk through the dark to find the real light.
The dream ends in that profound darkness. He wakes up, grabs his voice recorder before the PR team can stop him, and tells the incredible story we just spent the last hour unpacking.
But what is the waking takeaway from this dense mental theater? Because we promised everyone listening that this applies to them, too. We don't want to just leave you in a dark hallway.
Let's talk about the practical psychodynamic prescription for this dreamer, and for anyone listening who relates to these struggles.
Based on this profound, multi-layered analysis, there are 3 clear, actionable steps for the dreamer's psychodynamic prescription and for anyone who recognizes themselves in this narrative.
Number 1, you must stop intellectualizing. We have to move away from endlessly analyzing our feelings and transition into directly experiencing them.
Do not hide behind big vocabulary words. Do not use logic and sarcasm as a shield to keep people away.
When you feel inadequate, when you see those giant, expanding clocks of anxiety ticking in your own life, accept the feeling. Let it hurt. Don't try to immediately explain it away with a psychological theory.
Feel the feeling. Don't just write a master's thesis on it. That is incredibly hard, but vital. Got it. What is step 2 in this prescription?
Step 2 is critical. Drop the games. In your relationships, whether it is with external partners, friends, or with your own internal anima, you have to stop playing the who confesses first power game.
Vulnerability is the only thing that disarms the harsh inner critic of the superego. When the dreamer tried to be sarcastic and superior, he lost his soul.
The superego and true human connection demands absolute authenticity. You have to risk the rejection.
And the final step, step 3.
Integrate. Don't decorate. You have to stop trying to wrap your massive insecurities in artisan gold leaf boxes.
True psychological growth does not come from building a flawless persona. It doesn't come from escaping into the Capo restaurant fantasy where waiters carry your burdens.
It comes from combining internal discipline with actual, unglamorous, difficult daily work, just like doing the late-night inventory at the supermarket.
You have to open the ugly cardboard boxes, sort through your real emotional baggage, and deal with the mess. You cannot just paint it gold and hope no one notices how heavy it is.
It is truly exhausting and honestly a bit awe-inspiring to think about the incredible labyrinthine lengths our minds will go to in order to protect our fragile egos.
Building luxury restaurants out of thin air, summoning monstrous anime characters, hiring celebrity detectives to conduct interrogations. The brain does all of this spectacular work just to avoid admitting the simple truth that we feel a little scared, a little behind, and a little insecure.
The human mind is a master architect of illusion, designed to protect us from pain. But as we saw so clearly in this raw, unfiltered recording, the unconscious is also a relentless, undeniable truth teller.
It will not let you lie to yourself forever.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
The next time you find yourself perfectly eloquently explaining away a failure at work, or the next time you catch yourself wrapping up a messy personal mistake in a beautiful, highly logical, unassailable argument, pause for a second.
Ask yourself, are you genuinely fixing the problem, or are you just packing your deepest anxieties into a shiny gold leaf box?
And more importantly, is your internal detective waiting just outside the door, notebook in hand, getting ready to walk in and call your bluff? Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is this comforting expectation of precision. You break your arm, you look at the x-ray, you see that jagged white line, and it is a clean, undeniable fact.
But the mind is murky.
The mind is a labyrinth of shadows and gold boxes, and sometimes the only way to truly heal a broken ego is to stop pretending the x-ray is a piece of avant-garde modern art and just admit, quietly and honestly, that it hurts.